A chance encounter. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when they first crossed paths. She was waiting for a cab after a long, tiring day at work. The wind carried the scent of fresh rain, and the city's neon lights reflected off the puddles in the street. She looked up, her mind exhausted, her body tired from the constant demands of her job. The cab she needed had yet to appear, and she was beginning to wonder if she should just walk home. He was huddled under an umbrella, glancing at the same cab, debating whether to share it. His expression was thoughtful, almost distracted, as though he was weighing an invisible decision. She noticed him staring, and for a brief moment, their eyes locked. A flicker of something, curiosity perhaps, passed between them. She smiled, the raindrops in her hair shimmering in the streetlight. "You're going to stand there all night, or are you going to share this ride?" she called out, her voice breaking the silence of the night. He laughed softly and nodded. "I thought I'd let the universe decide." She raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Well, the universe must be a little slow tonight," she said, taking a step closer. Without another word, they shared the ride. It was an awkward yet easy silence, with the gentle hum of the taxi and the sound of rain tapping on the windows. As the cab weaved through the streets, they exchanged a few words about the weather, about how unpredictable life could be, but it wasn't until they reached their destinations that they finally spoke with more intent. "Do you live around here?" he asked as they reached the intersection near her building. "Yes, just a few blocks away," she replied, glancing at him for the first time in a way that wasn't purely casual. "And you?" "Just moved to the city, actually." One evening they sat in the park, watching the stars. There was something sacred about the quiet around them, a peacefulness that made her feel vulnerable in ways she hadn't expected. She had never been good at letting her guard down, especially when it came to love. "I don't know if I can do this again," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can risk my heart. Not again." He looked at her, his gaze soft yet intense. "I get it," he said, his voice low. "I've been there too. But sometimes it's worth the risk." She turned to face him, searching his eyes for any sign of doubt, any flicker of uncertainty. But all she saw was sincerity. His hand reached out, cupping her face gently as if to say, "It's okay." Without thinking, she leaned into him, and he kissed her. It was slow, tender, as if the world around them had stopped, giving them a moment that felt like an eternity. The warmth of his lips against hers was everything she had been missing. The vulnerability, the tenderness, the promise of something more. The next morning, she woke up alone. The bed beside her was cold, the space where he had been nothing more than a memory. She reached for her phone, hoping for a message, a call, something to explain his absence. But there was nothing. No text, no explanation, just an empty apartment and a note left on the counter. The note was simple, written in his familiar handwriting, but the words cut through her like a blade. "I loved you with everything I had." She stood there for a long moment, holding the note in her hands, trying to make sense of it. She ran her fingers over the words, wondering what had gone wrong. The night before had felt like the beginning of something beautiful. How could it end so suddenly? She thought about texting him, calling him, demanding answers, but she knew deep down that there was nothing left to say. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no word from him. She couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way he made her feel alive again, the way he had opened up to her in ways no one else had. But it was clear now that he had made his choice. Her heart was heavy, but she wasn't angry. Instead, she felt a sense of loss, a loss of something she had never fully grasped. He had been a fleeting moment, a chance encounter that had sparked something deep within her, only to be extinguished just as quickly. Life moved on. She met new people, had new experiences, but she never forgot him. There was something about their brief connection that had changed her, made her realize that love wasn't always about forever. Sometimes it was about the moment. Months later, she ran into him again. It was completely unexpected. She was walking through the same park where they had spent so many nights, and there he was, sitting on a bench, looking just as lost as the first time she had met him. He looked up and saw her, his eyes widening slightly, like he had never expected to see her again. "Hi," he said softly, almost as if he were afraid of disturbing the silence between them. "Hi," she replied, her heart racing. They stood there for a moment, neither sure what to say, but neither wanting to let the moment slip away. "I never got to explain," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was scared. I didn't know how to deal with what I felt. I still don't." She nodded, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. "I understand. You don't owe me anything." "Trying to figure it all out," he said with a half smile. They exchanged numbers before parting ways, neither expecting much, but something about that chance meeting lingered in the air, like an unfinished sentence. Over the next few days, they texted, casual at first. She told him about her favorite spots in the city, places that had a quiet charm. He told her about his work, his recent move, and how he felt both overwhelmed and invigorated by the newness of it all. They both had walls carefully built over the years, but there was something about the simplicity of their connection that made those walls feel less important. They began meeting for casual dinners and late-night walks. Sometimes they explored the city together, wandering down streets neither had seen before. The days seemed to blur together, each one marked by an easy camaraderie and a growing sense of something deeper beneath the surface. The chemistry was undeniable. When they were together, everything else faded into the background. They found themselves in each other's arms more and more often, the world spinning around them, but never quite touching their hearts. It wasn't long before they started sharing more personal things. Her struggles with a past relationship that had ended in heartbreak, his sense of displacement in a new city where he knew no one. They connected on a level that felt almost too perfect, like a dream too good to be true. But they were cautious, both carrying the weight of their past. She wasn't ready to fall too deeply again, not after what had happened before. He had his own insecurities, the fear of being tied down or of losing himself in someone else's expectations. They stood there for a while, neither speaking, just taking in the presence of the other. It was a quiet moment of acknowledgement, of understanding that life was complicated and love wasn't always easy. As she walked away, she felt a sense of closure. Maybe they weren't meant to be. Maybe they were always just two strangers who happened to share a moment in time. But that moment, those days together, would stay with her, a reminder of how love can come into your life unexpectedly and how sometimes it's just enough to let it go.